Hi, I'm Raymond. I'm a UX designer with a background in customer service and fundraising. That experience really sharpened my communication and empathy skills. So, I actually transitioned into UX because I've always been drawn to solving real problems and just making things easier for people. Recently, I completed projects like a feature for Paramount Plus. I also did a dashboard for a food bank, and in both cases, I led the user research, created the wireframes, tested the prototypes, just to ensure that the final designs were accessible and intuitive. But what really drives me is designing products that have a real world impact. I know that having a good team around you is so important, so I am looking for a team which is collaborative, where I can keep learning and also just contribute the skills as a designer. Yeah. Starts with understanding the user. So it's all about beginning with things like discovery. So we'll look into background research, we'll do interviews, surveys, or competitor analysis, just to really uncover the real user needs, the frustrations. And I also define key problems using tools like personas, journey maps, which help me to really stay focused on the user's perspective. Next, I would move on to the ideation, and then sketching, and then building like low fidelity wireframes, and then I'll evolve them based on that feedback. So once I've got like a prototype to run, I'll do like usability tests using moderated tools like Maze, and then I'll iterate it from there. And then I'll also make sure to stay in regular contact with stakeholders, developers, and just making sure that everything aligns with the business goals and the technical feasibility. But overall, my approach is user-centered. It is collaborative and iterative. I am open to creating solutions which are simple, accessible, and pretty much solve real problems. One of my most challenging projects was designing a dashboard for a local food bank. So at the start, the goals weren't clearly defined, and I was getting scattered feedback from multiple stakeholders. But what I did to gain clarity was I conducted like user interviews just to understand the user needs. I also did things like feedback surveys, just to kind of get the internal priorities. I then created a feature for a prioritization map to kind of define and set the MVP expectations. But the project did have like tight time constraints, and I had to focus on the functional designs, and we'd make sure to test them early on with the users so that we were getting in the right direction. But in the end, we did launch a prototype that got positive feedback. So it was really easy to use. The process taught me a lot about handling things like ambiguity, staying focused, and just managing like stakeholder alignment and goals. So I try to see constraints as creative opportunities. Early on in the process, I make sure to align with the business goals, just to try and understand like what success looks like from their perspective. And I also look to speak with the developers as early as possible whether it be during ideation, wireframing, to kind of understand the technical limitations and the possibilities that we might be working with. So if a design can't be implemented exactly as planned, what I make sure to do is I collaborate with the team to find that middle ground, so that we can focus on something that can stay within the scope of the project. But in the end, it's all about open communication, staying flexible, and just making sure that the user's experience won't suffer. Even when compromises need to be made, is so important. So some of the tools that I use primarily for designing is Figma, and for prototyping as well. It's my go-to for everything from wireframes, high fidelity mock-ups. But for the documenting process, sometimes I do use Figma as well, but mainly I would do things on Google Search or Word docs and stuff like that. I'll also use Maze for usability tests, Miro for brainstorming, but I do have a general basic understanding of things like HTML, CSS, which helps like with collaborating with developers. I'm always open to learning new tools, so if it helps to improve collaboration for Focus, it's always the right thing to do. You know, it's always the right thing to look for a new tool that will help me, assist me grow as a designer. So one of the things I would say are the greatest weaknesses: over polishing like wireframes early on, and spending too much time to make them look perfect before getting any real feedback. But I've learned over time that, you know, it's always about having something that can just be out there. And, you know, we start with things like low fidelity and sketches early on, and even if it's rough, we can just bring that out there, test it, because it's based on that feedback that we'll be able to actually create the real solution. But it's mainly to be focused on the user's needs. But now I try to prioritize progress over perfection, because, you know, irritation is a strength, it's not a sign of failure. So yeah. But yeah, thank you for watching. I really appreciate the chance to reflect on my journey so far, and I'm excited to keep growing contributing as a UX designer, so I'll be open to hearing any feedback. Thank you.